But so we just hit the camera and we're about to start the podcast. So I'm gonna have to let you go. But
Oh, dude, yeah, do what you gotta do, brother.
and then I'll give you a call soon and we'll connect. All right?
Yeah, sounds good, my man.
Cool, dude. Well, I love you, Pat. I'll talk to you soon.
Love you too, Zach. Text me later.
Later. Is that thing still recording?
That is still recording.
All right.
12:35. It's Monday, October 30th.
This is Pitchside Prospects, and we are here with you with episode number 7. Jose clearly doesn't have enough jerseys in the closet because he's had to repeat already. But don't worry.
I repeated this one already?
Yeah.
No, you're lying.
I know. I wore my
No. I had a different one.
No,
I had the polo, didn't I?
No. You've
No.
already wore the
you're
Madrid jersey. No.
This isn't Madrid. This is Milan.
I mean, sorry. You've already worn the Milan jersey. Yeah. I was wearing
thought
the
I thought I wore the Milan polo.
Bro, I edit these things, so I literally I was staring at you wearing it for an hour and 45 minutes after I sat with you wearing it for an hour and 45 minutes. There were 3 hours I sat looking at this jersey.
Which one was that?
I want to
I have
say
to fact check this.
podcast number 6 was the latest one. Here's the clip.
No way that I did it.
Here you are. Wait, this is podcast number 5, isn't it? Yeah, because I was wearing the white when you were wearing. There it is!
That's what I'm saying. That's the polo.
Oh, you're
There we
right.
go.
Okay,
There
it's
we
got
go.
a collar on it.
There we go.
Oh.
See, I ain't repeating, bro. This is a throwback. The same way that I don't know if you've used Arsenal yet,
I haven't yet.
but dude,
And I
the
have 2
throwback
Arsenal
jerseys go hard.
One Nike and then one Adidas that a player gave me from the club last season.
Well, if you're using that same knowledge, that's a Puma, and this is
okay.
Adidas.
All right, I'll give it to you. You're right. I see the Puma on your
Boom.
shoulder.
Just the same way that we want to start with talking about the Classico. You know, you had us.
I did. Madrid was in my mind.
You had me in the first half right there. Not gonna lie, where I didn't know. But Madrid, you know, they hold strong.
Yeah,
and they do what they do.
No, and it's funny because at halftime, the entire conversation was about how poorly Madrid was playing, and that it was bound to be Barca's day. It was already 1-0 at that point. But then,
what were the last words that the commentator said right before the halftime?
They always bite back in the second. That's literally what he said. The commentator's like, they always bite back in the second, so get yourselves ready for a game. And Jude Bellingham.
Hey, Jude.
What again?
Be afraid.
Once again,
you know what's
this
hilarious? Especially on a day where Barcelona wears the Rolling Stones tongue out jersey. Hey, Jude comes in, rescues it, and you know what they posted on Twitter after the game, which I loved? It was Jude Bellingham, Camavinga, Tchouaméni, and Valverde walking on the streets together as if it was like a Beatles song or Beatles album cover, and they're just saying that the new generation's here, my friend.
Yeah,
and it was something beautiful to see for me.
I saw a funny edit that was like Mbappe looking at a picture frame of Jude doing his celebration, and like the Mbappe was like crying, like the Jude is living out the Mbappe's life that he could have had, and now it's like, do they even need him?
Because me as a Madrid fan, I don't want him to come.
Right?
When he made that first summer where he could have came and he said, you know, I'm going to stay and make more money here. That in my mind was like the final straw. Like, hey,
like you're not a true Madrid man.
No.
Where Jude, when he was getting picked up, was like, I don't care about these other offers at all.
No, and look at him. He's embracing the Spanish culture.
I don't believe that.
Learning Spanish, like getting in with the Spanish accent and stuff.
Like his Spanish was bad, and the mom was teaching him. And
imagine, especially in the Spanish culture, where people actually like really care about that.
When we were in Spain and I was trying to speak Spanish as best as I could, people treated me with more respect. Because I was there trying to speak their language. Even if it was somewhat, I spoke Spanish like South American Spanish, and they go, oh no, here it's because it's Spaniard Spanish. And that whole experience, that interaction, I gained respect in their mind by trying to speak their language. when you're in the area, that's just the right thing to do, especially for Jude, who's going to be probably spending quite some time at that club. It's
Well, I hope
a
that
sign of respect.
he keeps getting more and more friends with the people that he's there with, because I know the people that are there right now are the youngins, and those youngins want to stay there for a while and they want to dominate. Because what I've seen from Spanish media is the commentary is that Real Madrid, the team, they play for the badge. They play for what that means.
I always see
And
that celebration
and Barca, yet on Saturday, they played
for themselves. I mean, Gundogan came out after the game and had a interesting interview where he was stating that he wished there was more frustration from the players after the loss shown in the locker room. And it's funny because there's another video taken of Gundogan before the game when they were asking him which one's better, the Manchester Derby or El Clasico. And his answer was, well, I've never played in El Clasico and I've had some incredible Manchester derbies. So for me now, it's the Manchester until you can prove me otherwise that this one's better. And then he goes in and his team loses a 1-0 lead.
and he put in the goal.
And they don't
goal.
respond in kind when they lose in the locker room. So for him, he's leaving like, yeah, it's the Manchester Derby. What's the El Clasico thing? Like, my team doesn't seem to care about it the same way that my Manchester boys did against United. So for him,
So whose fault is that? Could you say that's Xavi's fault for not making it clear, like, hey, this is the game
yeah,
at
maybe.
your home?
Not one person's ever at fault. Is Xavi on the field playing the game? And how young is Xavi's team, and how well have they really put it into the brains of those players, like what this means, what this game really means? And it could be Xavi, it could be the club, it could be the players, it could be the lot. You know, I'm gonna go on a limb and say the players are at fault here for their lack of experience and their age. It's not their fault, but to treat it with more intensity and care before, during, and after. Now, I'm not going to say that they didn't during. In the first half, they were dominant. In the second half, they played a bit scared. They still created chances, but Real Madrid had the momentum. Now, don't get me wrong, the 1-0, I think it was the 64th, the game was still on the wire, meaning there wasn't one team clearly pressing against the other.
No, it's good 1-0, 1-0.
The game was on the
for everybody.
freaking wire. And a rebound came out, and Bellingham, boy, I don't know if you got a chance to see that first goal, but just boom, bang.
Technique.
Oh my gosh, that ball hit the back of the net so fast. I was like, the only thing I really like took in was the sound of that thing hitting the net, which is just like the same way at Loyal when we were watching Loyal lose to Phoenix Rising on the fourth goal. I felt like the entire stadium went silent because just heard like the ball hitting the net at full speed. And don't forget, that's Ter Stegen in net there.
And he got a hand to it as well.
And he got a hand. This is not like, this is a top level strike. Ronaldo-esque, Brazilian R9-esque strike, where it's just like, hits it with that instep that leads to the outside of the foot, the contact area. So like that. And what ends up happening to the ball is it goes shoom and swerves outward at the final moment away from the keeper's dive at full power. Oh my gosh. Now the second goal,
he said that was his favorite goal of the season by far.
Oh yeah.
Because you know what he joked about? He was like, you know what? Everyone talks about me that I only score tap-ins, so I gotta say that. I gotta say that for me, my favorite goal of the season has to be the first one. But the second one, you know, some people kept standing, and I took the opportunity, and I made my own luck based off of the opportunity, and I scored. So, goal's a goal.
I don't know if I feel the same way about him making his own luck in that situation. I want to say Modric made that luck.
So what if he's not there? If he's not there, then what happens?
But that's not making luck. That's doing your job. That's not lucky for you to be in a position that you're supposed to be in that moment. What's lucky, I'm just talking about luck. What's lucky is Modric reaching out with the outside of his foot, trying to control the ball in front of him on the right side of his body, mistouching it, but sends it against the ground, which makes it bounce over the center back, leading to him being in a good position. Where's the luck in that? It's with Modric. It's not with Bellingham.
I say it's all of it combined.
He is
Because
supposed to do that role. He's supposed to be there. Yes or no?
couldn't you say that for a lot of people and that role doesn't get fulfilled?
Yes or no? He's supposed to be there. That's his job. It's a simple yes or no. There's no answer there. And so if he isn't there, is it unlucky? No. We look at him and say, hey, you're supposed to be there. That's your job. That's your role.
But what are you gonna say?
I'm just trying to describe to you where the luck in the 30% chance took place in that moment.
You think all that luck was there?
It was Modric. Modric, in that moment, he made that direct run into the gap, which was brilliant because nobody was there. The ball was great to him. His intention with that touch, in my mind, no way, no how does he try to hit it with the outside of his boot off the ground, back that way, continuing with the momentum from the pass he got from the outside to bounce over a center back who's caught between marking Modric and Bellingham and drop right into Bellingham's feet, who was in the right place at the right time.
You know what I gotta say to that? It's a golden.
Dubs.
It's a golden Ballon d'Or touch, my friend.
Dubs.
It's a Ballon d'Or touch.
Dubs for Madrid and a shot to Xavi, who says he only scores tap-ins. But here he scored a world-class finish.
And a 90th minute winner.
And a 90th minute tap-in.
And he shushed the star boy. And he did the celebration. It was a win all around.
The whole game was invigorating and entertaining from start to finish.
How about
being a Barca boy, I was disappointed with the result and also the second half performance. And I feel that we really didn't play with the intent like we were in charge, like we were going to win in the second half the way we played in the first.
All right, but let's be real. Since the Barcelona boys lost, it's like, it's okay. Don't worry about it. Maybe you can get him next time when you said it matters more, right?
You mean to them?
No, I'm
or
saying
to me.
I'm saying right now.
Right now for what? For to them or to me?
To everyone.
It's all right. What's the point difference? How many games are still left in the season?
A lot.
What do they learn from this experience? And how are they going to go into the next time they see them for 3 points in the league? That's, to me, yeah. He says the one that I call more important. I call this fixture down the road closer to like May time period, or it could be even April?
Yeah.
When they'll play each other again in the league, but there's really only like 5 to 6 matches left. The points are starting to barrel down into who's going to win the league. And you get a second chance to adjust your tactics based on the first time that you saw the opponents.
Oh, and it's definitely not going to be the only time they see each other.
You can't argue with me.
Each other in the Spanish Cup before the next league match. Maybe they see each other in the Copa del Rey.
Well, you can't argue with me that that's when the stakes are higher.
I mean, it just depends on the league status. Like last season,
it does.
Last season or 2 seasons ago, when we had already won the league and you guys beat us 4-0 at home, that was like your big achievement of the season with Xavi. And we ended up winning the Champions League that year.
We won the league.
No, that year we won the league because you guys were in a transition.
Last year?
I'm saying 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
When you beat us 4-0 at home.
Yeah.
And it was Xavi's first ever Clasico.
Oh, yeah.
It was a good win, good win.
But that was Xavi making a statement. Like, I'm here, and this is what I can do.
That's okay.
That was like, and so they blew it up into something that it really wasn't, because like you just said, that year, Madrid wins the Champions League and the title. So good for you. You won a 4-0 game. Like, good for you.
That's what I'm saying.
I get that, but that was 2 years ago, and this is now. And this weekend, you guys can be arrogant, confident, proud, whatever you want to feel. But there's still plenty of league left to play, and I still have belief that this Barca team can win the league again over Real Madrid. I do believe they have the players and the team to do it. Now, I'm also in line with Gundogan's sentiment. I think at that level against that team in that fixture, it should be all or nothing. And if you receive nothing, the response from that should be like when MJ told Kobe, like, you can wear the shoes, but you're never going to fill them. And then Kobe got to see MJ 3 weeks later in another game. And for 3 weeks, Kobe didn't speak to a teammate in practice. And he was so frustrated that he turned this frustration into, how am I going to be better than him in 3 weeks? And he spent the next 3 weeks in this developmental frustration mindset that fueled him to continue to train or train even more than he already was. To the point where even his teammates in camp didn't want anything to do with him in training because he was too intense. And it was like, that's kind of the response that you should have at that high level fixture.
I mean, if you
when
want to get
losing a game of
results,
that.
if you want to get results,
If
if you want to just keep coasting and keep making your money, then you put in what you get out what you put in.
And if it wasn't enough, you have to put more. And so I feel in line with Gundogan's sentiment and frustrated that he even has to come out and interview and share his own frustrations because he didn't feel comfortable enough to do it in his own locker room.
How about we talk about something that's even
That's a shame.
more uncomfortable right now that's happening in the situation in the world of football, where we've got a professional Premier League player having his parents be kidnapped in his home country. And
Yeah, so for clarification, what's his first name again?
Luis Diaz.
Luis Diaz, the Liverpool player. I believe he's 25, 26 years old. Great technique, great skill.
Electric player.
Very kind of smiley. Always has a smile on his face. He's fierce, but enjoys while he plays. And over the last week or so, something has transpired where this young man is from Colombia and he's playing top level professional football in England. And back in Colombia, his parents were abducted and are being held for ransom. And within a day, the mother was found, but the mother and father were separated
on the same night.
On the same night. But the mother and father were separated upon abduction, and the father is still
remains at large
being
being
looked for. And
Monday the 30th.
And Diaz hasn't been able to obviously be in England playing for his team because he's back home in Colombia with the authorities trying to sort out.
Oh, he's in Colombia right now?
Yes. Yeah. And when Liverpool scored, Jota scored.
No, I gotta say that was something of class, and like the whole team coming and like supporting that is like showing unity, and like that group is like dangerous.
And Salah, it was funny because Salah, the goal scorer, Jota, had a moment. Like normally when you two are a part of a goal, you go to each other to celebrate, right? But Jota turns around, goes straight to the sideline, grabs a Luis Diaz shirt and spins it. And Salah has this moment like, what is he doing? Oh, yeah. And we all go and they all support him. They hold up his jersey as they score the first. They go on to win the game and played excellent this weekend. So hats off to you guys. And for him, and in a terrible situation like this, which, believe it or not, unfortunately, is not uncommon in football, you'd hope that your club is in full support of you and your family, and you'd hope that the situation gets resolved quickly with no pain and no loss. And so our hearts go out to Luis Diaz and his family and even the club who's at a loss without him, because it's a sad, tragic experience that he's having to go through right now. And like we were talking about tragedy in football, and it's common, believe it or not. And there's stadiums that falter and people pass, and there's illnesses that come and shock people, take people from us. There's people that pass while they're playing the game and they have heart attacks and they fall, and there's tragedy within the game And we were talking about how in Europe, a lot of these people's stories are part of the social narrative in the newspapers and everything. And
Well, it's like you just said, social narrative, and like all of the media outlets are talking about it. You see it on Instagram, on even like old people's news, because like even old people are invested in this culture that, like you just said, the mass media is forming for the people.
and that's what football is. It connects people to empathize with the person next to them, regardless of club or competitive spirit or
Or age,
title.
or gender, or race,
Age is a great,
or religion.
yeah, age is a good one too, because even 30 years down the road, we'll still honor some of these people because of the narrative that they had during their lives within football and what it meant to all the other people. And we'll touch on that later as well with another man who changed the face of football in England for some time.
I mean,
And
now that we're talking about it, you want to mention him right now?
we can mention him now, and then I'll talk to him more in depth. But Sir Bobby Charlton has passed. And for those of you who don't know, he was one of the best English players of all time. Um, he really did form and put Manchester United on his back for 10 years in the 50s and 60s and led him through arguably one of the hardest moments any football club has ever had to experience. And I'll get more in depth about him, his life, and the things that he did alongside of others during that time at the end of the podcast. But rest in peace, Bobby Charlton. And
Rest in peace.
thank you for all the things that you've done for football.
And we'll be praying for. I'll be praying for you, Luis Diaz, and hopefully everything goes well with your family. That is the last thing that we want to
Yeah,
see in football.
our hearts go out to you. And yeah, and football is this way. It connects people based on the narrative of who we are as people and not players. And then we all come together on Saturday or Sunday, and we enjoy the competitive spirit of the beautiful game like we always do. And we might be at each other's throats, and we might be cussing at each other, and we might be screaming bloody murder. But when the game is over, it's an overall respect of like, these are our people. Whether they're against you or not, we all know at the end of the day, it is the beautiful game. And things matter much more in life than just the game sometimes. And it connects all of us to this deeper meaning of why we are about football, why we love the teams we do, or the players that we do, or why our club is the way they are based on these players, and how we relate to those sentiments. And then it connects us in a deeper way that leads us to turn on our TVs at 4:30 in the morning on Saturday in America to watch your team. Like, that's the true beauty of the beautiful game, and or one of the true beauties of the beautiful game. And so, as far as the game of the week goes and the narratives and what caught our eyes this week, that is where we stand, where we're at.
Since we're talking about the game and like all of the things that happen off the pitch, why don't we start talking about what happens on the pitch and how we deal with risk and reward? I think we've talked a bit about how Real Madrid risked it a little bit, kept on going.
Yeah, I brought the sentiment or the idea of versus reward to the table. And in order to kind of dive, into that, I'll ask you, how did your games go this weekend?
Oof. The games went really well.
Yeah, because I got a filter of risk versus reward going on now. So go ahead and tell me about them.
So I had my youngest team play a game. I had my oldest team play a game, and then I was covering for a coach that had two different games. It was my first ever time coaching a 9v9 game, like professionally, on my resume. Ended up losing that game 1-2. It was somewhat like the Classico where the other team just held on with a 1-0, and they came back and they scored two off of mistakes that we had. And I loved seeing that age group play because I really was opened up to the possibilities of these players at that age group with the space that is given to them. Because it's a pretty big space for 9 players.
It is.
And like you can
The goal is
manipulate
usually
that
bigger to the keeper
you
too.
can manipulate that space so much. And if you use it correctly, oh my gosh, you can make a deadly team.
So are you saying that teaching kids about where and when at 77 can make a big difference in the 99 game because space is a premium?
Mm. How about you repeat that again? Let it really sink in, you know?
So do you think that teaching kids at the 77 focused on where and when is the right way to go about it? Because when they hit 99, space is a premium?
Possibly.
Just saying.
It
Something to think about.
It just like it's all about the balance, right? We talk about balance in regards to like how you balance your life, but this is a balance that I think I've been struggling with in my coaching, where I don't know how to balance the teaching of space and body orientation and awareness versus the technical actions that happen in the game of football, whether that be a shot, a cross, a long ball.
That could lead you to the technical actions that lead you to those advantages. Because you can't really just get to them without being able to technically do the action that gets you there. But arguably, the actions in my shape and formation and style of play, to get there, we play the intermediate. They're simple actions: receive, pass, 5 to 10 yards at a time, move immediately, repeat, rinse, and repeat until we find the final pass break. And when we could break it past the final line, that's when momentum is generated, and we try to maintain our forward momentum once it's been created. And if it can't be maintained, then we'll come back, we'll connect the team, we'll recycle possession, and we'll try to do it again.
I almost died there.
You did, but I couldn't stop talking because I had a great comment. It was flowing well. But for the 99s, then you said it ended 2-1?
1-2, yeah.
And they won 2-1?
Yeah.
And for one, when you were down 1-0, did you have to
I was
risk...
up 1-0.
Oh, you were up 1-0.
It was up 1-0 to lose then 2-1.
So
two in the second half.
When you were up 1-0, did you make a decision to play a little bit, continue the same and continue to be progressive and forward attacking, or did you start to
No, I
put
told
up the wall?
told the boys to do the same thing. You know what's hilarious is that so I was doing this for another coach since it wasn't my team. So I don't know the parents that were there, and I started telling the boys to play out the back because that's what you should do. Like, I don't care. Play with the ball. And you just hear the reactions of the parents, like, gasping when the ball's to the center back, like, oh, like, I'm like, relax. I'm like, relax. Calm down.
Yeah.
Like, if you guys have that emotion, imagine how they're feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine how they feel when the risk is at the highest.
That's exactly
and
right.
the reward is at the lowest, and the player knows that, the other teammates know that, and the parents are showing the emotion. It's like, calma.
And
Like,
you just
for
said
real.
something brilliant. Why is the risk at its highest and its reward at the lowest when you're in your build-out phase and you're playing the ball your center back or your keeper? Why is that?
Really?
It's very simple, but why is that?
That is where the other team's objective is, and you are giving them the closest distance to their objective. So to put it in a very in that way, it's like that. But if you want to put it in a simpler term, it's just they're close to your goal.
What if you arrive closer to their goal? Your risk is somewhat...
It's less because they're farther away from their objective / your own goal. Because what are they trying to do? Are they, like, let's say when you as a coach set limitations on the game, are you giving them 20 passes to make a point?
If you're up 7-0, maybe.
Or like, let's say in a practice, like you can set limitations of passes.
Or not,
or
use this part of your foot.
Or dribble through a cone or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the objective of the game is to score a goal in the net.
Always.
So you are taking their objective further away from them. It means that they have to work more to get to the objective. And that is why we have to be thinking as a team, even at the young ages. I don't know at what age you would start implementing this terminology, because I think it's very like strong for the mind to start thinking like this, because I mean, you and I are seeing it in our day-to-day lives of what we do on a day-to-day basis on our business. Oh, is this risk going to get us a good reward, or should we do something else? Risk for a reward, like
with the business is different. We're still learning how to judge where is the risk worth taking and where is it not, and we're taking risks in places where maybe we shouldn't, and we're learning from the loss of the reward.
But that's what you should do.
Yeah, and that's how you learn. And in football, we'll go like, because you explained it really well. When you're attacking, your risk is low, your reward is high. When you're defending or you're building out in your own defensive end, your risk is high, your reward is low. But in order for players to understand anxiety and panic, they have to also understand the risk versus reward in the sense of what they're creating on the other side of it. If they're risking a lot by playing on their own defensive end and inviting players into their half to press them, they're also creating space behind the opponents where it's most deadly. So you do get a payout for that risk. That reward is high still. It's just not as high as, okay, a goal could be scored like that if we won it in the offensive half. But let's talk about getting in the offensive half. And we hear players all the time, how do I be confident? Or how do we break the final line? How do I score a goal? Where do I find that chance? Well, if your risk is very low in the offensive third and your reward is very high, then why are you so particular to be so perfect in that moment? It means that you could fail 100 times. You'll learn from the experience, and you're not going to lose too much as far as the lost reward, because you're so far up the field that there's time to mitigate or take the level of threat down based on the time you have from all the space you created from being on their attacking third. You could recover, somebody could delay, somebody could cut it out, and now you're back on the attack.
So let's talk about that, because
risk while you're in the offensive third.
It was a podcast it was 1 or 2 podcasts ago where you had talked about how going back 60 yards and coming back 60 yards to go back in the attack is a pain in the butt for everybody.
Yeah.
Because like you said, the whole block has to move. And so wouldn't it be a good risk versus reward to even try to win the ball there and maybe even give up a foul? Like if you don't make it, because going back to the tactical foul, you don't have to
counter.
You don't have to go 60 yards at full sprint. You could jog it, and people can be back in position really nice, and like be in a block instead of you.
To answer your question, yes,
all out of shape.
Your risk is much lower as you're pressing in the offensive third, and your reward is much higher, because if you win it, you're closer to the opponent's goal and you're ready, catching them off guard. And so the change of momentum creates space and gives you opportunity. And then, like, of course, like, if they are getting past you and you risked by pressing hard, a smart tactical foul in that moment, even if it leads to a yellow, is a smart decision, because then it allows everybody to get ball side, goal side again, set up their formation positions, and be ready for the next attack. So as far as like spaces on the field and risk and reward, there it is in a simplest form, right? Higher up the field, your risk is lower, your reward is higher when in possession and even out of possession. When you're back on your own defensive third, your risk is higher, your reward is lower. But if you look at it also in the sense that what you're creating, your reward is still worth it. You play in the back to create space.
If you do it correctly. Yes. If not, then it goes the other way.
But how do you teach 7-year-olds to do this correctly? They got to fail at it over and over and over again. And each time they do, you got to let them know it's okay. This is the other options in that moment. You touch the ball like this, it'll lead you to play there. You touch the ball like that, it'll lead you to play here. When you receive it in this area, you should see people here, 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 and there. And if you don't, it's not necessarily on you, it's on us in our shape. And you start to conform this idea in the player's brain about how to manage that risk and reward. And go back to my center back who dribbles his first player. His risk versus reward there is very high risk, very low reward. And
I'd
as he
say it's medium reward because if he does it good, then it can lead to things.
As he goes again to take a second man, the risk is twice that it was of what it already was.
Yeah.
And the reward is twice that of what it already was.
Yeah.
But is it worth it now that your risk is at a ×4 or a ×2 and your reward is at a worth 1?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, because as we lose the ball in that position, it's almost a surefire goal against us. But if he can take his risk and succeed in it, and then play out into the next advantage, the reward from that is exponential
100%.
because you took a risk, like you're going to play on blackjack, or let's say roulette, and you picked black. Bang. Well, you picked the right thing. Your risk is you lose everything or you double. Well, he just doubled it. But if he chose to dribble again, he lost it all. And so risk and reward is in not just spaces on the field, it's also in decisions that players make. We'll look at that furthest pass in an 11v11 game. Usually the furthest winger is the most open player. And we, in positional possession, say the far pass is the best pass. It creates the most time. It's also the hardest pass to make. And while the ball is traveling, it gives players time to move to intercept or press where it lands. And so that ball has to be perfect. Not only that, normally when you're playing that furthest winger, you're cutting across diagonally the whole field. So you're going to have to avoid probably 4 to 5 opponents with that pass.
A lot.
The risk is very high, but the reward is also very high. And how do you determine whether that risk is worth taking, or if maintaining possession, cutting back, playing the pass, opening up is worth doing more? How do you weigh your risk versus reward?
I think for that specific one, it's your ability.
Okay.
Because either the center back knows he can put the ball there, or he knows he can't put the ball there. And if he can put it there, then it's just about making sure that the timing is right, because it's all about timing. You're talking about space, and then I'm going to add the timing aspect. When should the runner start making the run so that the pass can be at the right time made?
And think about the risk reward factor in the player's brain that has the ball, right? And in that situation, he's going to have to make the decision that's going to lead to either counterplay or a goal scoring opportunity. So it's a teeter-totter moment. And like you've just stated, the physicals are the player's technical attributes change the weight of the risk versus reward. But for me, who teaches cognitively more than executionally, it can also be situational awareness. So in this situation, the right winger picks up the ball. He drives inside because that's where he felt he had the space. And he recognized that the right center back of the opponent stepped to him, not the left center back. Mm-hmm. And because of that, the right back had to shift in and pinch in. And now I play that pass because what I've decided in my brain is they've situationally disorganized themselves in a way that makes that a high potential pass and easier to hit for me. And although maybe my technical ability isn't at an all-time high to ping that ball into his space, just perfectly onto his run, because the opponent's shifted in that manner, I can hit that pass straight to his feet. It doesn't have to be the perfect ball, and I've still made out on a higher payout to my risk versus reward. My reward was a higher payout.
Now, so let's talk about in the detail, in the detail of that pass. If you're gonna make it from the right wing on the coming in your inside, and you're probably gonna hit it with your right foot. I'm assuming being a right-footed player.
Yeah, but if he was left-footed, you could lead him.
So that's the best pass to make, right?
Yeah, it goes away from the opponent.
Left-footed with your inside of the foot to make it lead away from the opponent. But if you're gonna do right-footed, I mean, you gotta have some talent. You gotta have some talent.
I used to take free kicks from my high school team, 20 yards out. Anything past 20, I wouldn't take. And if it was
right on the edge of the box,
20 yards out, right side of the box, that was my kick. And every single time, because I play the whole game right-footed, people were like, he's going to hit with his right. He's going to hit with his right. Shoom, outside of the right. Yes, I am. But not like you thought I was. And it worked. A lot of the time, it really did work.
Is that where you got your goals from?
I got goals from that, but I told you before, I got most of my goals in college from driving down the left wing with the right foot.
Yeah.
I would cut in to show them I'm going to shoot with my right, so they'd shift over to this side. I would drive the byline, the goal line, right? That would shift them back to try to get in front of me. The keeper would shift to their near post, and with my left foot, after that direct touch toward the byline, left foot far post pass to the net.
Slotted.
And I ran that on repeat in college for my freshman and sophomore year, like 9 different times. But never was I a goal scorer of that nature in high school ball. I've said that before too. I was like built upon creating assists. But I want to touch back on risk versus reward because like in the methodology of Barcelona, and this changes every year, right? But when I was learning it, there were 4 advantages to consider. It's the positional advantage, the qualitative advantage, it's the social effective advantage, and it's the numerical advantage. Obviously, the conversation goes much deeper when you start considering the physical attribute advantage. But because we're at Barca, this isn't something they speak about or like to speak about. They like to focus on those 4. So take those 4 advantages, and just for a recap, qualitative is I'm better than you, positional is I'm in a better position than you, social effective is me and him work really well together, nobody can stop us,
MSN.
and numerical is we got numbers up. When you can understand those 4 advantages and identify them on the field as they're transpiring, your ability to decide on risk versus reward increases. And I can only explain that in a way that when I started playing football for fun, which is really hard for me to do, in my older years after 5-6 years of coaching, the player that I was insanely better than the player that I was in college. And I would run less, but I would do more. Why is that? Because I spent the last 6 years teaching players how to recognize advantages, identify advantages in the game, and then when to execute those advantages in order to create opportunities to score or opportunities to just maintain possession in tight spaces or opportunities to start counters or opportunities, well, however, create set pieces and multiple corners. When you can identify those advantages in game, in the moment, in each situation, your decision making becomes easier, and your ability to decide upon risk versus reward also gets easier. Then if your technical actions of that long ball are quality, like you stated, now the risk even goes lower, the reward goes higher.
Oh, yeah.
And you should be constantly weighing this risk versus reward in your brain.
And now let's go even more in depth based on each player on your team. Because we know that little Jimmy can do X technique. We know that little Johnny can do Y technique. So if I know little Jimmy is amazing with his left foot, I'd like to be that left winger and he gives me that ball into my feet or in space. Whereas if, what was that, little Johnny? Little Johnny's a good dribbler. I want to make sure that if he gets in behind the defense, I want to be there for the tap-in. But we just need to understand who is who and how I can complement the team.
And there's another detail on my mind about risk versus reward is I teach my players to build out intensely. In most situations that other coaches would be like, we're done. We can't get past them. We're going to kick it. And I'm like, no, I came here to watch you guys try to solve this. I didn't come for anything else. I came to watch you try to figure this out. And in that, let's say the game is 4-5, I'm up and the press is on from the opponents and I'm demanding that my players are building out. I've assumed the risk as the coach. I know what could be lost, but I'm teaching in a sense that's different than the risk versus reward that a player would have in the moment. And I tell my players in those moments, when you do feel there's no solution, you've been pinned into the corner, your own defensive corner, by 2 players, you have to throw into the count risk versus reward. If you lose it here, what happens? Goal. So can you just nail it? Yes. Yes, you can. But how often are you going to hear me say, clear it? So very rarely.
It's situational.
It's situational. In that moment, I want him to think the safest thing to do, the lowest risk option now, because options have been cut out, is to clear it. But there are, in depth of risk versus reward, there's a way to get a higher reward even when opting into the clearance. In that situation, can't you clear it right into their freaking bodies?
Yeah.
And if the higher you hit it, the likelihood of it hitting a hand or off the chest or them being able to control it down is very low.
Oof.
And
Now,
so
yeah.
you have to create the sense of, all right, I'm out of options. The risk here is in so high that I don't have a reward here. Oh, wait, there's a small reward that could be created. I have to risk hitting it off of him. Now, if I play it low, anything below the knee could be controlled and then turned into a counter. Anything above the hip is going to be near impossible for this guy to control, settle, beat me one-on-one, and get to goal as well. So then in that moment, the player has to know the risk is high, the reward is so low, but I still can get something. It's in that moment of clearing, even though coach says don't do it, off his shoulder, off his hip, off his chest, off his head, throw in. The whole shape now can reset. We got left, right, center, and far. We got the throw in, so we can talk about where we want to look to put this thing.
So now that you're talking about a throw in, I want to talk about the risk versus reward, about the defensive team that maybe just gave up that opportunity to win the ball there, but they got a dangerous opportunity in a throw in situation that
To lock them in now, you're talking about.
exactly.
So the defensive team that conceded the throw in now has the chance to come and bring all of their opponents to the area.
I like
and knock
to
us
bring
in.
him to the area, not just vertically, but also on the y-axis. So imagine you have a field with 4 corners. You just close the field to 4 corners, and you invite them to play on the outside, but they have to figure out a way to get to that side, and that is going to be very hard for a young
Off
kid.
a throw-in especially, because even at
Oof.
the top levels of football, throw-ins are losses of possessions often. And so you have to think, if we come and lock them in and we can get them to put their head down before they can pick their head up, then the likelihood of them playing that backspace is lower, and we're truly going to lock them in and win it here.
And since they are opened up, it is our time to just exploit them centrally. Like when you win the ball there, you do not want to play with each other. You want to go to goal.
The irony of that is, in that situation, I also feel advantageous as the team with the ball. Because you've come and you've locked me in, and all of that space is there, I'm ready to exploit you. And my boys are trained in a way to exploit that condensing of space by positioning ourselves in a way that uses all of it that's given. And so there's a likelihood that my left winger in the 2-3-1 is probably not attached to this play at all. At all. He's going to be wide, and he's our outlet. He's not high and on the build-out line waiting for a kick to get in. No. He's pinched in centrally on the opposite side of the field, because if one player gets it, we could play him as the intermediate pass, and then my striker has the time to make the next run into the space that's been created.
Yeah.
And we want our striker moving forward into the opponent's attacking third, not coming back to receive it with his back to net. Just in the way that we play.
So let's get into the detail of this. Most throw-ins, I'd say they go down the line. Let's just say
60%.
Let's just say
70%.
Let's say 60%.
Somewhere in between.
Let's say conservative. 60% go down the line. The down the line is so that the team that has the throw-in gets to maybe get another throw higher up the field and to keep it out of the danger zone in the middle. So let's talk about how to deal with that as a defensive team. You cannot let the ball go back out for a throw-in. I think that has to be the number one priority.
It's not possible.
If you do that,
it's not possible.
Why?
You have to just watch football. It's not possible.
But that's what I'm saying. You have to position yourself.
It's not possible.
Why?
Think about the position on the field where everybody is. Think about where the ball is, and then think about how the bodies are orientated in the moment that the ball is on the sideline. Anybody in the middle of the field is facing the line. Anybody that's defending that throw-in is facing the ball, which is arguably body orientation is facing the line. You have to be goal side of your opponent, and your opponent is penetrating the line. They're using the line in this moment. So the only way that you could win it and keep it is to turn your body centrally and to go through them with the ball centrally.
So this is how I want to set up my teams in such detail in regards to throw-ins. I think that their first the team that is throwing the ball and their first closest man down the line has to have two men in front of him. One in front, one behind. The one in front to then not let him come in and check in for the ball. And the second one to cover either the one behind him or that same man.
So what if I throw a center mid behind that sandwich?
Then it's going to be still a 3v2 because you're going to have...
I've just taken two birds out with one stone, though. My one winger had two players sandwiching him.
Yeah.
There's my two birds with one stone. We completely avoided him.
But there's someone behind. But what I'm saying is, I have someone behind him, and now it's a 3v2. I've got one. You've got one.
You can't count those two that are sandwiching him because you have a player here. I've thrown it over their heads to an ongoing center mid. Those two are done. They're not a part of this play.
I'm saying that I got someone right here too. Why wouldn't someone be covering him either?
Great. There goes the center mid now with your center back. And I have a left winger, and I'm in a 1v1 situation, and you're attacking.
In that sense, my risk versus reward would be to get a throw in, and then
to get another
reshape again for you. Yeah,
See?
Because you just beat it.
See,
you just beat it right there.
It's impossible not to give another throw because you're attacking the line, and your momentum is facing the line. And if we can play this line, it's the same way when I was giving examples of what I did as a winger. I used the line as what? A
Your
teammate
advantage.
To create
you had
possessions.
As an advantage. Yeah.
Teammate to create possession. We're doing that in the same way in that situation because there's no manner in where you can organize your body orientation that is, let's just say on the heavy side, 60% of the time going to lead to you in possession in that moment. No chance. No way. I haven't seen a team create such success on the throw-in situation.
I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna figure it out, and then I'll post a video of it.
Think about the solutions that there are for that line too. Instead of having my center mid drive past that final line,
the 9.
What if I have him check out? Your player goes with him, check in. We throw it to his feet. He drops it off first time down the line. How are you gonna stop that?
That's what I'm gonna figure out.
That's what I mean.
I think that I still believe that the two on the first one is the solution, but I will get even more details and I'll get game film for you.
Don't waste your time. Don't waste your time trying to solve how to win the ball back from throw-in possessions.
Why not? Because I feel like that is a very common solution or a very common problem that happens in the game.
Focus on how
that people don't take advantage
keep the ball on your throw-ins. Why focus on the moment when you don't have?
Because you win the ball there and you score. It's a high. We're talking about risk and reward. That is a high reward situation if you can win the ball there. But like you just said, people haven't found out how to do it. So I'm just trying to give options to see if, hey, who knows? Because at the younger ages, how many kids can really throw that ball over that first man? There's some.
I have 4 out of my 9.
Really?
That have a long throw.
Like long.
For the space of the field, yes.
Dang.
And
I wish I had that.
Also, when you're in training and you're training throw-ins, you should be training both sides of the throw. So, again, in order to train your defensive shape that you're trying to create, more success in recovery of possession off a throw-in is going to come in the context of you running possession throw-ins in your practice and focusing on the defensive end. And I guarantee you in that experience, you're going to be working on both phases of the game.
100%. And
I don't believe your time should be focused on the defensive actions in that situation because you're going to be more upset at the moments that you didn't keep it when you had the ball than the ones that you didn't win it when you didn't.
But even then, like you just said, I'm going to be able to look at both sides of the ball when I'm doing that one. So I'm killing two birds with one stone.
When you figure out how to keep the ball from going off the line over and over again, let me know. because I don't
got
think
you, man.
I don't
I
think
got
I've
you.
seen a team being able to do that.
Don't worry about it.
Because
I got
the
you.
advantages are in favor of the possessive team in that situation. 100%.
Really, because I feel whenever I have that situation for my teams, I feel a disadvantage because I do not have the outlet to throw it long. I have to play in that area to then get out of that area.
Yeah, no, my teams, we eat that stuff alive.
Well, that's beautiful.
Tight spaces to play into big spaces. That's what we do. That's what I teach constantly. And then how do you check in, check out to create the space? How do you play in ones and twos based on where the pressure is? And when does the break come? That's a conversation I have with my boys every week in a different situation or space. So on the throw-ins, it's really no different. But I will say this. On the throw-ins and possession with my youngest team, I often give them where I want the ball to be thrown. I do not leave that decision usually in the hands of the players because their ability to identify the advantages in that moment are lower. They need help solving the situation until they see the solutions firsthand, and then they start to pick them up without instruction. But particularly in this season, I've had to probably 90% of the time call out where is that throw going to go. Free kicks, corner kicks, all that stuff, never. They got that stuff down. They're communicative, all that.
As in, like, where the ball's going to be played.
And how they're going to play it, who's going to move to it, what play is going to be played, whether we play the 45 to a left footer who smashes it, or we play a left footing cross that's low and hard to the near post.
For 9-year-olds, that's pretty cool.
And they do all that. And I don't got to, all I got to do is pick who's going to take the kick. And then, these players, they raise their hand, me, coach, me. And I go, in this situation, I want this young man, because this young man I know is probably going to do that kick. That's his favorite kick. And in this situation, based on where everybody is and how the game's been going, that's probably the most advantageous action we have at the moment. So just by picking who's going to take the kick and knowing who my people are, what they're normally choosing to do, is going to dictate how they'll play it. And then if I put this young man on the corner kick who's got a great left foot and this young man on the top of the corner of the box who's got also another great left foot, if he plays here and he goes far post with his left, before they can come out, it's a goal every time.
So now that you're talking about set pieces, and you know me, I love to be the one that looks at the opposite of attacking. I love to be figuring out how we can mitigate the risk of, let's say, you coming at us again once we have a set piece. I want to talk about when we're attacking.
I'm cooking something for set pieces right now. And it's going to involve the back sixes. And I'm still developing this idea.
What is that?
It's on how to.
No. What is this?
I'm cooking. I'm cooking.
You're like on Marie now, like
let him cook. I'm cooking. Yeah, and I am deciding upon this action of playing back spaces more than central spaces in free kicks because the amount of goals I've seen in the Premier League in the last 2 years from this action. Also, it makes a lot of sense keeping the swing of the ball away from the center of the box in those situations because that's where a majority of the players are. And then if we play wide zones in a critical moment, it will bring those players in the middle out, creating space there to be exploited. And realistically, the ball that you're asking for the player to give is harder. So you got to have a real set piece merchant, somebody who's like incredible on putting the ball exactly where you want it to be. And
is that something you think that kids should do? Like, let's say out of their like 7 days of the week that they can go train on their own. You think one of those days should be focused on like set pieces, whether that be free kicks or corners or even I like penalties. I think people should practice penalties.
I think that's a no-brainer, and that already happens. Players naturally get a ball or ball bag. They go out to a field. And
you think they do that too much?
Yeah. The very first thing they'll probably do is set free kicks and start shooting them. You know, and if they got buddies, pens is a clear example of what they'll be doing. But, like, I was watching the Bobby Charlton documentary, right? And one of his teammates, who also survived a plane crash, which we'll get into later, was saying you could throw a ball at Bobby, you could kick a ball at Bobby at any part of his body, and he'll be able to control it. And I feel like that statement is a statement used for Johan, is a statement used for Ronaldinho, it's a statement used for some of
Maradona.
the best players in history is ball control. So if you go out to a field and you're working on your own or with a teammate, work on ball control. Ping 70-yard passes and see if you could keep it up in the air and ping it back. That's ball control. See if you can hit a ball off a wall as hard as you can, full shot form, back at you, and settle it right in front of you for another shot on your second touch. It's ball control. Ping a ball 80 yards into the sky and see if you could take it off with different parts of your body. Do the outside of the foot. Do off the thigh. Boom. Do off the thigh to the chest. Do things that allow you to develop this confidence in your ability to control the ball in many different situations and circumstances.
It's funny that you're talking about that because with my team, like our pre-practice thing that we do, it's either a rondo, like a big one where we have either one or two in the middle and we keep it one touch or two touch tight, or the one that I like to do. It's a big rondo, but no one in the middle, and you're just keeping the ball in the air.
Mhm.
One or two touch, and we make it a game.
Ball
And
control.
for me, this is something that I enjoy to do. I love seeing my team being the one on the field, the only team doing that, like as a team, and laughing and having a good time, and you just see the ball getting up super high and people touching it with the outside,
other
with the
practices going
thigh.
on, looking over, like,
No,
what are they
well,
doing?
I can imagine
What are they doing? That
it's
looks
hilarious
fun.
because what the kids that I was doing the 9v9 game with when I first arrived, they were like, "Oh, you're the older team's coach, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they were telling themselves, "Oh, that means he's a good coach." I'm like, "No, guys, no. Don't believe that. Whoever told you that is false."
It's probably just this young kid looking up to the older players with
And they see
idolism.
that
Yeah.
because they're leaving their practice. That's what we practice in front of all of the families, and you can imagine me being loud and talking to the kids and enjoying, and they see the laughter and they see the ball super high in the air and someone bringing it down. It's like, wow, that. And I
Wah.
tell the boys,
Wah.
what I say is,
It's cool.
guys, I wanted to make it look like Rio de Janeiro right now.
Yeah.
Rio de Janeiro, we're on the beach. And I have a Brazilian guy on my team. I'm like, hey, this is like Andrew's backyard, yeah?
The difference is when they
boom,
do
boom.
it, they ping the ball at each other on the second touch. With no
Hey,
remorse.
We're working on it.
Bang!
We're working on it. We're working on
You
it.
have to
That's the
bam!
next level. That's the next level. But I would want to get to that level eventually.
I love that. When I show up on the beach in San Diego sometimes and see a little real Brazilian circle going on, and I can tell the difference when how the ball is moving. And on the second touch, if they're pinging it at each other, it's something I want to engage in. And I'm like, all right, let's do this. And they look at me always like, this guy.
Not gringo.
And then the first like 3 or 4, like my first touch, I'll do like an around the world control and volley it laces right into his chest. And then that moment, they're like, oh, respect.
Shit.
Next one comes at me as hard as it can, right? And I'm like, off the chest, little head roll, bang, header right into his head. See what he does with his head, and this is a different level of ball control. I, as a teenager in high school, would get my ball, my headphones. I'd start in one end zone of the football field, and I'd juggle the ball to the other end zone and back. And I was constantly trying to just walk the 200 yards, but with the ball in the air. At a certain point, that got too easy. And I started having to tell myself every touch, the ball has to go above my head, which that makes every juggling touch harder, the higher you put it. And realistically, there were no in-between touches unless I messed up, meaning that if the ball ever was touched below my head, that was a touch I didn't mean, and it wasn't intentional. Each touch was meant to be above my head. And arguably, I cheated a bit because if I put it up to my head and I headered it 50 yards, that was well within my right of what's okay, because it's above my head each touch. And I developed this sense of ball control from the amount of time I spent with the ball. And that's one of those things that we're trying to express and give to players, which is like, take your ball everywhere you go. And in the future, we'll be having carrying bags, branded with our company. And I would like to see players putting their ball on their backpacks and taking it to school.
It's a culture. It's a different
to the family
culture,
parties
man.
at the park or playing in the backyards, or taking their ball when they're going to hang out with their friends at the mall and getting in trouble because they kicked it off the wall too many times. Like, take your ball with you and see how it changes.
That's borderline offside right there.
It is.
That was
yeah.
I had to like VAR check that real quick.
Listen.
Like, all right,
Hey, if they ask you to leave,
Clear.
you leave.
Yeah.
But take your ball with you wherever you go and spend your time with it, because I remember I juggled something like 4,000 times at my college juggling event. And all the young kids of the city were there to watch. And how do you do that? How'd you do that? How'd you do it? And in the moment, all I did was focus and touch the ball simply. But how I did that was 10 years of spending
hours.
my time with the ball, to where I would tell those kids, and I'm holding the ball, I'm like, I don't think there's anything I've spent more time with in my life than this thing.
So, and we're
Not
talking
my
about
brothers,
confidence a
not my
lot,
mother,
and we see people always bring up this question, like, how can I
Every
get
time
more
we
confidence?
do a Q&A,
It's
a
about
confidence question.
It's about the hours that you put in, and it's about how well you know yourself, and like how we were talking about before, that big cross field ball from a center back. Do you think he'd be confident in that action if he knew he couldn't do that? Absolutely not. He would not even try it because he knows it's going to be bad.
Repetition creates confidence as well. I mean, think about, and I'm like on the Barbie Charlton thing. He's in the World Cup final, and he gets a ball placed right in front of him, easy finish, and he goes in the documentary, yeah, he played it right in front of me. I was going to slot it home any day of the week. But think about this. This is a World Cup final. It's 2-2, and this guy is like talking in a way, it's just like any other kick that I've made. Why? Because it's just like any other kick that he's made. He's made tens of thousands of shots just like that. And there is no panic or overthought or lack of confidence in that moment. In fact, there's very little thought going on. It's a repetition of action that your body mechanics have memorized. And bang, it's a goal. So as he sees the pass coming in right into his stride, no panic, no fear, only goal. That's the only thing on his mind. So confidence is not just this thing that's created from your nature or your relationship with failure. It's also about the person that you are, the time you put in, and your own self-belief developed upon the things that you've gone and worked for. You can't just self-believe you're the best volleyer of the ball on the team and then go smash volleys. You had to have gone and trained volleys for an hour and a half extra a day for months.
And focused and be intentional about it, not just going there and trying to put the ball up in the air and just kicking it. You have to analyze what you're doing. You can't just do everything willy-nilly because
relate that
you don't
to
get
freestyle.
anything. You don't get anything out of it if you don't put the intention into it.
That's when I was learning to be a competitive professional freestyler, and I only did it for 2 years. I trained every day for 2 hours, just juggling. In those sessions, I'd focus on 2 to 3 tricks in particular, run the repetition of those tricks hundreds of times to learn it. And as you're repeating a trick hundreds of times, the analysis, the data that you're intaking is so much more in depth than what you're doing if you're just looking at the trick for the first time, or you tried it, or you're just fooling around. The things I took into account in those trainings were the spin of the ball, the height at which I hit it. Did I hit it right or left? The centralized location of the ball. And then how did I touch it? Did I touch it with the top tip of my toe? Did I touch it with the top tip of my foot? Did I touch it with the lace? And is that why it went forward, why I came back, if it stayed straight centrally? And then also as it's coming down, where in height did I touch it?
All the details, because
like
it all
closest
matters.
to the ground.
It all matters.
Every single aspect of detail made a difference in my ability to recreate the trick that I was trying to master. After weeks of doing that level of detail and analysis, now my brain can do a homie Mitch, which is a double inside, one rotation, with no thought, no warm-up, no nothing. My brain just ball, bang, double. And I guarantee you that's something footballers across the world, only 2% of us can do. Because it's not a game realistic trick. It's not something you use in match. And it's something that you rigorously have to train in order to master. And when you rigorously train an action to master it, when you're in the game and the moment comes to perform that action,
It comes
there
second
is
nature.
no thought.
It's second nature because you imagine how your brain thinks about it. You have already made the motor skills and the neural pathways in your brain so that the brain is sending the transmission to your limbs of what action it's going to do. And since your limbs are already connected to your brain, it's just effortless.
So again, like, confidence is not just the act of changing your relationship with failure and understanding risk versus reward in the attacking third and being willing to try more. And it's not just the repetition of actions to master the technique into the moment where you can nail it with no thought. It's also an understanding that you might mess these things up and you'll have to try again to learn the perfect moment to execute it or the perfect way to execute it. And I think the hardest part about this is players don't seem to feel confident unless they created something on the other side, like a goal was scored, an assist was made, these things. That's not the case. The success was created when you gave an advantage to your teammate.
There is so many
That's it.
actions in the game. Like I couldn't tell you how many collective actions from the 22 individuals plus the subs that come on are made in the game and that define a game. So each action that you do, just like you said, whether that be a good pass, a great clearance, a tackle, a Brexit tackle, whatever you
Brexit
do
tackle.
that helps out the team, you got to celebrate that. Because if you do that, that just puts the other team psychologically a little lower.
Now, I always have this thing on the other side of confidence is, well, you just feel like you've been playing poorly and you can't score your goals, you can't get your assists. Then keep it simple and find your little advantages that you create and find your confidence from the things that you're doing right in the game and all those millions of moments that make a little difference. You don't have to be the cat that makes the big difference. We all want glory. We all want to
What
play
a beautiful
striker.
game, though. What a
but
beautiful game that we live, that you don't have to be the one making all the work.
I love to be the assister. And I found love in that role. It got no attention. Everybody went off to my striker and celebrated with him.
But you know that what you did is helping the team. Maybe without what you did,
but I'm not
what
arrogant
happens?
about it. I'm observant of it and knowledgeable of it, and also my sense of self-belief and confidence develops from that. And then I go to my college team, which is not that team I'm playing with that striker, and the one thing the coach is saying is, oh man, you really set up people really well. And there it is. There's your validation that you have been creating success and you should be confident, even if it's not turning into goals and assists. And then you go to the other side of that. Mental resilience. Arsene Wenger talks about this. Is one of the hardest things for a professional footballer or a top level footballer.
A professional
When
in general.
things don't go well, how do you fortify your mind into a resilience to where you self-belief is still strong, your ability to accept failure and try again is strong, but your understanding of the repetitions that you've made in the game in your past have brought you to this point. You belong here. So it's strong. And your resilience to the outside words and comments and tabloids and news is irrelevant because you have this confidence of yourself, even when things are down, that you're good enough to turn them. Well, unfortunately, you can't feel that way without the repetition and action and experience. And if you fall to the pressure and you lose your resilience, that could be the end of you.
Dude, this was such a great topic to talk about
We nailed
because I
that.
feel like we just got like 5 short form little
100%
bits out of there
nailed
because
that.
we gave so much value in that little moment. And I hope, Adrian, you could see that.
Yeah, we
and
kind of
hopefully
skipped
see
into
you
your Q&A
go and
there, Adrian.
ball out now.
And it's like we've said, it's not going to happen overnight. You got to go put that
It's
work
that
in
preparation. And imagine, it's not linear either. What you're doing is going to be an exponential growth curve that the more that you stack up, the more it's just going to explode and you're just going to be like, wow, what happened?
Think about it as a progressive roller coaster with increasingly high highs and low lows. Right? And so as you're going through your journey, it's not a linear one, man. It's up and down like life is. And your highs will be incredibly high, your lows will be incredibly low. But what is linear should be your self-belief, your confidence, your mentality to continue to try. And when things aren't going well, certain actions, go and repeat them. Go train them. And I guarantee you, like any perishable skill, you'll get back on top with that execution of the action. It'll lead to more advantages, and you'll experience more success.
No, and it's all about repeating and being very position specific. Just like we talked about before, when you're doing your individual training, think about the actions and the moments that you have in the game. Because as a fullback has X action compared to a striker having Y action. Why would you train something that is not part of your position? That's something that isn't part of your game. Why don't you try and master what is part of your game to then become the best at that position?
Another risk versus reward that just popped in my brain was a fullback last season. He was asking me, okay, coach, you love to build out. The ball usually ends up at my foot at the right back with pressure from the winger coming in. How do I handle this situation if my winger isn't in a position to play to and my six hasn't checked in centrally and I'm stuck in this one-on-one and I'm not the best dribbler? So like these one-on-one situations are really causing me a lot of failure and a lack of success, the risk versus reward, I'm losing out on it. And I go, well, how can you risk less and gain more? Well, every time I take them on 1v1, I seem to be entering a 50-50 moment. All right. Let's just state that neither of your players that are in support are available. Who will you always have in this situation? There will always be one.
The goalie.
Okay, there's a goalie. Great. But coach, you always ask me to look forward first. You want me to play forward. So how do I do that then? Great. Great question to follow up with. To minimize your risk and maximize your reward, how can you create a double action? And I talk about double actions in football a lot, but I think it's the first time I mentioned it here on the podcast. The double action would be if I went to receive the ball as the right back in that moment and I saw the 9 running into space and I played the long ball down the line into that space. The first action would be if he gets it, he's through, we took 50 yards, 40 yards. If it's intercepted, but I hit that ball hard and against the line, as we were talking about before, the likelihood of it going out for a throw-in and me maintaining possession and moving the whole block up is very high. So now I've taken the risk versus reward and I've lowered the risk and I've higher the reward by focusing in on an action. When I receive it, I'm going to receive and play. Before this guy has closed down the space, before I've even decided, the only other thing I've recognized is as I received it, these two supporting actions weren't available. So now I'm going to play that ball right
and
away.
Because that's a great point that you mentioned.
Situational awareness.
They're
that
not
leads
there.
to increasing your reward response.
If they're there, that's a better action. But because they are not there, you have to make the best of what the situation is. So that's a great
So you
action
get a
that you
double
make.
action. You play the ball. If it gets through, he's in. If it doesn't, you get the throw in, the block moves forward. There's your double action. The same way, like, we talk about early services. Like a winger plays a ball in behind the defensive line, but before the space is closed between the defensive line and the keeper. So the ball goes in that space. Well, the whole defensive line is now at full speed facing their own goal, while our offensive line is also full speed facing the goal. And the keeper has to make a decision to come in and come out. The double action there is if I play it and my teammates get onto it, that's a real goal scoring opportunity. If they get onto it and they hit it in the direction they're facing, which is likely because the pressure's on their back, we can get a corner kick, an own goal, a pressure point situation with little time to react. So there's your double moment as a right winger, right fullback. Try to create, in order to lower your risk and up your reward, look for double actions. You're not going to just see them out of the blue. You're going to have to have a coach who helps you highlight and watch the game to see what your position is doing in that moment and why. Like you just said, think about it.
And then you not just be the only one that says, oh, well, coach told me to hit the ball far, so I hit the ball far. And then the 9 just stays there standing.
And now you're just a robot pressing a button.
You have to communicate these things not only with that player that's in the troubled area, but who's going to be the one that's going to be the outlet? Is the 9 actually going to do the work to get him behind and run? or is he just gonna stand there and watch the ball go to the other team? Like, these are all things that it can't just be to one person, because, like you just said, was it Xavi's fault that Barcelona lost? Maybe, maybe not. In football, it's not only one person.
No, never.
It's most likely at least two.
Yeah, and I always like to say if the ball crossed our line, it's the 11. That's bottom line. In fact, it's the 12 or the 18 or the 20 because I'm included in that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so all of us, when the ball crosses the line, it's on us. And how do we respond in kind to change the outcome? And I have a team right now, a younger team, that doesn't have a goalkeeper. So we're rotating the position. Every time one of those players concedes a goal, they feel like the world is crashing because it's their fault. And every weekend, I'm reiterating the message: what happens, or whose fault is it whenever we concede a goal? All of us, coach. And one kid funnily goes, like, in a joking way, goes, "Yours, coach."
He's right.
And I'm
He's
like,
right.
"You're
It's
right.
your
Hey,
fault."
I've assumed the risk, and I'm okay with you guys saying it's on me, because if you guys collectively feel like it's me, then at least you're on the same page as a unit. But you have to also follow what I'm asking for. So, okay, it is me. I accept that. That's my risk that I've accepted. But this is what I'm asking us to continue to do, because when you see it work, you'll understand why.
So now that we're talking about a unit, I think it's a good time to segue into the Sir Bobby Charlton segment.
Yeah.
And really go deep dive into this man, and what a beautiful life he had, and what a crazy adventure that really is not something that we wish in the football world, but he lived it.
So I'm going to try my best to do this in a concise way that allows the viewer to understand the depth of the man and what he truly meant for Manchester United as a person. Bobby Charlton was a footballer in the 50s and 60s. The Manchester United plane was traveling to
Munich?
Brigade. It was traveling to Munich, yeah, to play a team called Brigade. And on the way to the game, the plane crashed. And in 1953, Manchester United not only lost 9 to 10 of their star players, but quite a lot of the staff members. After doing some research, I found that there are roughly about 15 survivors, 9 of them being players from the current team. Bobby Charlton was one of those young men on that plane who went down with the plane in one of their first experiences in competing in the Champions League football and survived the crash. Bobby was alongside 2 other men, Harry Gregg and Bill Fuchs. And out of the 9 players that survived the crash, those 3 continued to play with the club after the plane crash. Now, it's important to kind of recognize that Bobby Charlton had a moment after the plane crash where he did not want to return to the club, but felt very strongly that somebody had to take responsibility on continuing to move the club forward, or else it could completely crumble. Manchester United was as big then as they are now. So to consider a club like that to go under because of such a traumatic situation was sad, to say the least. And in the first game from Manchester return after the plane crash, they won a highly emotional match against Sheffield United. And it caused Bobby Charlton to feel inclined to return to Manchester United and restore its glory.
Oh, so he didn't play that game.
He did not. He watched that game.
Wow.
And was in a state of, I don't know if traumatically, like, I don't know if I can do this. And after seeing all the emotions in that night and the team playing and getting back on their feet somewhat, it was a done deal for Bobby. And the reason out of those 3 players that he's spoken about a lot is because at the time, Bobby Charlton was regarded as one of the best footballers in the world. And he was 20 years old and he's from England. England having the pride they do in football, this meant a lot to the country. And as he was still in limbo on to returning to the club, he was getting pressure from the country and also the city to return and play. And, this was traumatic because Matt Busby was the head coach of the team that went down in the plane. He had to spend almost 10 weeks in Germany after the crash recovering. And there was a coach at the time called Jimmy Murphy who was out with his international team who didn't make it to the plane ride. So he was, as they were returning from Munich, in charge of rebuilding Manchester United while Matt Busby was recovering from injury, recovering from the plane crash. And he was also relatively responsible for bringing those 3 stars that survived a plane crash back into the team and organizing them in a way to play football after such a traumatic loss. You can kind of get a sense of the man, Bobby Charlton, and who he was for taking on such a responsibility after such a traumatic experience and being such a young man. A lot of the people that knew Bobby before and after the plane crash said he went to Munich a boy and came back a man. And that's a statement a lot of people used from during that time. Bobby, Matt Busby, Harry Gregg, Bill Fuchs, these guys, that same year as the plane crash, and I'm sorry, it wasn't 1953, I think it was 1958, the plane crash went down. Then 1958 made it all the way to a FA Cup final and lost that final. Matt Busby, after the game, said, "Give me 5 years and I'll return this club to its former glory." 5 years went by and Manchester United, really off of Bobby Charlton's back, were climbing. And 5 years later, just as Matt Busby had said, Manchester United won the FA Cup final in 1963. Their return to top level football was a marketing point to say, we're not done climbing. We want to get back to Champions League football and win that trophy that put us in this traumatic situation in the first place. We want to make it full circle. And you can imagine Bobby Charlton, Harry Gregg, Bill Fuchs, and Matt Busby, even Jimmy Murphy, who took the team while Matt Busby was in recovery in Munich, all felt a strong sentiment to take the team to that height. And 5 years later, in 1968, Manchester United was in a Champions League semifinal against a highly rated and favorited Real Madrid team to win the Champions League. 2-0 down at half, Manchester United comes back to win the game 3-2 in the semifinal. 1968 pushes them to play Benfica in the final. But after taking down a tyrant like Real Madrid in a game like that.
What a harsh word. What a harsh word to use.
In a game like that. Because during the time, the Spanish...
A harasser.
The Spanish...
Keep going with the story. Keep going with the story.
Anyway. They took them to play a team, Benfica. But after playing Real Madrid, a tyrant like that, they were completely focused and in belief that they could take Benfica out and walk home with the title. And that's just what they did. And after they won the 1968 Champions League final, a lot of these guys decided that they had done exactly what their life was meant to do. Bobby went on to play for England and win England their first World Cup title.
Their only World Cup.
Their only World Cup title.
1966?
It was, I want to say, yes. But this game should be spoken about. This was Beckenbauer versus Charlton.
And Bobby Moore.
The game. It was West Germany versus England in the World Cup final. And it went 1-0 England, 1-1, 2-1 England, 2-2. And in overtime, the A third goal was scored by England that was not a goal. I watched every documentary. I've listened to Frank Beckenbauer's report on it. You can see the videos of the shot. It hits the crossbar, it goes down, it hits the line, it goes out.
That's
But
crazy. That was that one.
after 5 minutes of arguments, the referee gives the goal and it goes 3-2. And then later in the game, maybe 2-3 minutes later, it folded. England scores a fourth and it goes 4-2. The common argument between Beckenbauer and Charlton was that third goal wasn't a goal, and who knows how that World Cup would have ended if the call was made correctly. Fast forward to nowadays in VAR and what we're dealing with now. Trust me, they've been dealing with this.
Jeff Hurst's Wembley goal. That's the Wembley goal.
Yeah, and trust me, we've been dealing with this human error in the game for a long time. But they're both good, we're good friends, and this kind of capped off Bobby Charlton's life as a footballer, but also as a man who experienced one of the most traumatic situations any human could experience, and in the aftermath found the strength to get back up on his feet, to put the patch back on his chest, and at a time where the club had lost everything, try to give it everything back.
You know what's crazy? Is that Bobby Charlton's brother, Jack Charlton, was also part of that England squad. He was actually started as a center back. So imagine those parents having to see one of their kids survive a plane crash and start in a World Cup final, and then also see his little brother play next to him and win England their only World Cup. That must be insanity.
Yeah, and Jack comes out and he talks about how whenever Bobby got the ball on the England team, there was a moment where everybody would like gasp or hold their breath and be like, because he was so prolific with dribbling the ball and attacking spaces that every time he got it, the threat was felt.
See, even
The whole stadium, even Zeke
felt
stood
that.
up to the Bobby
He
Charlton.
felt that Bobby Charlton.
And
touch
so
right
you imagine you watching a player and you've been watching the game, they're above the level, and every time you get the ball, fear's instilled in your heart because you're like, oh, what are they gonna do? Bobby was that man. And rest in peace to a great football legend and arguably one of the most admired men in football for what he did in the game. Not for all the accolades that he won and was awarded, but for the man that he was, to go through such a hard situation and come out of it a better man and a representative idol of Manchester United and who they are and what they're about. A legend of the game. Rest in peace, Bobby Charlton. You will never be forgotten. Like Liverpool says, you'll never walk alone.
I'm fixated about this World Cup final because I'm just thinking about it. In 1966,
I wanted to watch the game, bro.
That's 21 years after a world war had just happened.
Yeah, and it is West Germany.
And it was so like this World Cup final was at Wembley, in England, in London, with an attendance of 96,924 people, almost breaking 100,000 people on the day of the 30th of July, starting
the year
in 1966.
That's
66. I'm seeing the rules. No substitutions permitted. So for these players to go through 120 minutes of football, 11 people, and you're just talking about class players like Bobby Moore, Franz Beckenbauer, Bobby Charlton.
Yeah.
Like, it's just all of these things combined is such a crazy game.
I really want to watch the game from start to finish because in the documentary they talk about how the West Germany coach was telling Beckenbauer, you have to man mark Charlton. He's their best player. He's their engine. If you could stop him, we can win. Charlton was being told by his manager, Matt Busby, Beckenbauer is their engine. If you man mark him and stop him, we win.
You mean Alf Ramsey?
Alf Ramsey, sorry, because he was the English coach, not
Alfred
the
Ramsey.
United coach. You're right. And Ramsey was telling Charlton, you have to mark Beckenbauer because he's their engine. So the whole game, these two were told, you have to stay with each other And whoever wins this battle wins the game.
Wow.
Both of these players, though, were known as the guy who did what they wanted to create success. But think about this. World Cup final, top 2 teams in the world, 2 best players in both countries, if not the world,
Two teams,
being
two
told
nations
to
that
do
they
this
despise each
tactic
other.
that they don't like. And neither of them said, nah, I don't want to do that, or this is how I play it. They both said, got it, coach. That sounds like an easy enough way to win. Got it, coach. Listened to it, executed it, Charlton wins it. Why? Because he beat Beckenbauer in the 1v1s through the 120 minutes. And Beckenbauer talks about it like, hey, I was a really young man during that game. He was a more experienced player, and I felt like I played an amazing game against him. But it just wasn't enough.
The levels.
And then he goes to say, well, and the third goal wasn't a goal. Hey, fair enough.
That sounds like something Barcelona would say. You know?
Hey, come on. Liverpool would say something like
Amazing.
that. Not Barcelona. We
Amazing.
want to replay.
Amazing podcast right there.
Yeah, that was good.
I'm really happy that we got to go in depth with all the things that we wanted to talk about. Z even made a little performance with Bobby Charlton. You know, shout out Bobby. What is your handle?
My handle is ZJ Kaizen. That's my personal handle. Our other handles on social platforms are at Train Zone Sports. What about yours?
Coach JCKM, at JCCrM.
And this has been the Pitchside Prospects, episode number 7. We look forward to seeing you on number 8.
Hasta la vista.